Well, hello and good to be with you on Good Morning Geelong. About 3 years ago, the Mayor of Geelong at the time, Councillor Peter McMullen, called a series of conferences. I must admit I can't recall exactly what it was, but a number of people were invited from across the city looking towards the future, and I was one of those fortunate enough to attend. It was quite a good series of conferences looking towards the future of Geelong. One of those conferences was on the whole question of city safety and so on, and a high-ranking police officer addressed the gathering, and then there was an open discussion. I can remember being asked quickly, the facilitator just sort of singled people out and said, well, what do you think? And I had to think on my feet pretty quickly. And I just returned from a visit to New York, where I was enormously impressed by the safety of the city. I was able to walk through the streets of Manhattan without any fear whatsoever at any time from during the night, certainly up until 12 o'clock. I rode the subway every night without any drama. 30 years before, I'd been in New York, and it was a very fearsome place. The thing that made all the difference was the enormous police presence, and I did a fair bit of research on the whole question later on, and found that certainly the reforms under Mayor Rudy Giuliani had made an enormous difference, to the extent that New York is now the safest big city in the whole of the US, and I think has remained so under the current Mayor, Michael Bloomberg. At any rate, asked for a quick comment at this conference. I said, well, you know, New York seems to be doing a lot better than Geelong and Melbourne and other places in Australia. And I can remember being not shouted down, but certainly reprimanded by one of the serving councillors, who had a perfect right, of course, to disagree, and saying, oh, that's all about zero tolerance. Well, in fact, the Giuliani reforms were about a lot more than zero tolerance. It was about a whole lot of issues of social difficulties being successfully addressed, but certainly strong police presence, which is not the same as zero tolerance, was a critically important part of what turned a very violent city into a very safe one. The whole question of public safety, of course, is very much on people's minds at the moment, with the death on the weekend of a young 29-year-old man by the name of Luke Mitchell, who tried and go to the assistance of someone in trouble and ended up paying for it with his life. A very sad and difficult story, but unfortunately it's all too common. I live on Yarra Street, and every Friday and Saturday night at all hours of the morning I hear of, not in fairness, not necessarily violence, but certainly rowdy behaviour that couldn't care less about anybody else anywhere in the district. And the reality is this goes on week in, week out, and well, Geelong is, as we know, a place we've had a lot of incidents over the past few years. Geelong can be just as scary a place as many parts of Melbourne. And certainly I would suggest to you that the strong police presence does not appear to be here in Geelong. I'm not sure that it's anywhere in Melbourne or perhaps anywhere in Australia. And it's something that makes an enormous difference in so many other places of the world which are safe and where people are not living in fear with one another. Sure, you've got the alcohol culture, you've got the nightclub situation, you've got the drugs, you've got the mixture of drugs and alcohol. All of these are factors, and maybe especially ultra-lenient court systems which don't really hold people to account. But of all of the things which I suggest make a difference to make this here in Geelong and our Australian culture a much safer one in which to live, I'd certainly suggest that a lot more emphasis on police presence, backed up by courts that know what they're doing, will make an enormous difference. It's not a good thing for any of us to be living in fear of not being able to walk down the street, say at 8 or 9 o'clock at night on a Friday or Saturday night, without wondering who we're going to come across, someone who might look sideways at us, and what the consequences might be. The situations of a Luke Mitchell might be an extreme, but they're not a rarity. somehow or other we need to do something more than just talk about it. I'm just talking about it, but like you, I live here in Geelong. I think it's a wonderful city. It's got so much to offer, but like in Melbourne and in so many other places, we need to tidy up our act pretty quickly. I'd certainly hope that at long last maybe the government might do something positive about it and really put some proper dollars into an effective police force that makes our cities a much safer place to be. Good to be with you, and hopefully we'll see you next week.